Welcome back to the Twinspires jury. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Darren Zacali to talk our best bets and fades for a big weekend at Colonial Downs, Saratoga, and we'll touch on some Ellis Park as well. It's good to have you back, James. And Darren, as always, can you tell us about any promos we should be looking for this weekend at Twinspires?
Yeah, obviously a huge weekend of racing, so no shortage of promotions. We have a new one coming in this weekend, the $10,000 All Stakes Challenge, which features the 3 graded stakes races at Colonial Downs on Arlington Million Day. It also includes the 3 stakes at Saratoga on Saturday and a pair of stakes at Del Mar. The person with the most winning $10 win wagers out of the 8 races in the contest is going to win $10,000. And all you got to do is bet $80 to 8 $10 win bets and a shot at $10,000. So certainly that's going to be a great promo. We have a $3,000 challenge at Colonial on Saturday as well, a series of races there to help support their big day of racing. And beyond that, there's just a ton. We've got money backs at Saratoga. We've got Del Mar Daily Double Downs. We've got money backs at Harness Tracks and Hit It and Split It's. Go see the website. Go to the offers page. I promise you there's going to be something that you want to be a part of.
Thank you, Darren. And James, since we didn't have you last week, we'll let you kick things off. What is your best bet this weekend and where are you playing it?
I'm going to Colonial Downs, have 3 big turf stakes, Arlington Million, Beverly D, and Secretariat. I'm going with number 5, Northern Invader in the Secretariat Stakes. He's listed at 8-1 on the morning line, following a maiden win at Belmont Park. And I'll just go backwards first off with Northern Invader. He made his debut in a maiden special weight on the Kentucky Derby Day undercard. He finished second in that event, a second a month later on the dirt. Both races, he offered a nice turn of foot from off the pace to be runner-up. But he took his form to another level when switching to turf on July 1st at Belmont Park. That was a 10-horse field of maiden special weight rivals. The runner-up was going back to maiden special weight company after a stakes appearance. The third-place finisher for Chad Brown looks like he could be a decent horse. And Northern Invader romped by 8 lengths. Don't see a lot of 8-length maiden winners on the turf in New York. And I thought he was spectacular. I thought Northern Invader looked of stakes quality to me. I thought it was no. Now I understand that his stablemate More Than Looks is cross-entered to the Hall of Fame on Friday at Saratoga. But John Velasquez, I think, he might have stayed with Northern Invader regardless over More Than Looks. I think this horse has big-time stakes potential for Cherie DeVoe, and I'm going to go with Northern Invader in the Secretariat, Darren.
Yeah, I love the pick. He's one of my keys to the day as well, James. I actually had him as a best bet that day at Belmont Park. I think he was like 4-1 or 9-2 on the morning line, and he got pounded at the windows. The secret was out that he was going to love the turf course, and I thought he looked every bit of a stakes winner. I'm going to stay at Colonial Downs too, Ashley, and I'm going to head to the big one, the Arlington Million. Anybody who follows me on Twitter and at Twinspires knows that I have very long been a fan of Set Piece, who, when he is at his best, has an electric turn of foot. He just kind of depends on the spot that he's going to get. And he is stretching out to 1.25 miles. He's been a typical mile to 1.16 mile type runner. So I do admit that that's a bit of a question. But with the speed that you're going to see from ATONE and the presence of strong quality in here, among others, I do think he's going to get an honest setup. He's going to have that towering stretch at Colonial Downs to be able to make up as much ground, because at times he's been the best horse in a variety of races, never more so than the opening verse at Churchill, where perhaps a shorter stretch and some traffic has gotten him in trouble. The 1.25 miles, the big, wide, long stretch of Colonial, I think, is going to play right into his hands. I think he's going to get it set up. And this is a horse that's been 3-5 in odds on in his last couple of starts. He's 6-1 in the morning line. Florent Giroux here, if he just kind of waits, bides his time, and makes that one big late run, I think Set Piece is going to come rolling late for an Arlington Million victory.
Interesting pick. I like Set Piece as well. What are your thoughts, though? I thought Never Explain, the 2 horse, looked a little interesting too. Finished just a half length behind Catnip, who's also in this field. Any thoughts on that horse?
Yeah, I like him a little bit. He ran well behind Channel Maker. He's coming back pretty quick. That's kind of an interesting thing there. And then the Bowling Green, obviously Rebels Romance, who unseated his rider, was supposed to use that for a prep for the Million, and he's not going to be present here. Never Explain kind of did the same. Maybe that'll tighten him up, but he's coming back pretty quick in about 12-13 days, which is an interesting angle when you're going 1 3/8 and 1.25 miles. But yeah, if he runs back to the Bowling Green, he's not without a chance.
All right, well, I'm going to switch things up and take things over to Ellis Park also on Sunday as opposed to a Saturday race. And we have a number of non-graded stakes at Ellis this weekend. One of them is the Ellis Park Derby, and I'm going to be looking to back number 5 Blue Light in this race. This is a City of Light colt who is 2 for 4 for his career and has been racing between 6 and 6.5 furlongs. Last out, he won at Ellis in a 6.5 furlong allowance optional claimer and beat a next out stakes winner, clocked a 91 Bristnet speed figure, by far his career best. He's trying a mile for the first time for Steve Asmussen, who's an 18% winner with horses trying a route for the first time, and has Florent Giroux, another jockey that you just mentioned. And, Florent Giroux's been hot at Ellis this meet, 35% winner. And he's 6 for 12 teamed up with Asmussen over the last 60 days. So I'm going to try Blue Light in this spot, who I think we'll maybe get a little bit of a longer price compared to Transect and the other Steve Asmussen runner, who is, how did he do that? Who comes off a big win in the Iowa Derby as a massive long shot. Well, let's switch over to our fades of the weekend. Who is a horse that you're not backing at a short price? We'll go with you, Darren.
I'm going to try to beat Love Reigns in the Galway on Saturday at Saratoga. That's race number 7, which kicks off their late pick 5. I think she's going to be a heavy lean for a lot of players, being a Wesley Ward filly turf sprinter. I understand her effort in the Limestone turf sprint was very good. She always takes money. She has a big, ferocious late kick. And while there is a little bit of speed in here, I'm not exactly sure that she's going to get the same kind of setup where they went 21-2, 44-2 in a dueling battle in the Limestone turf sprint. I think this race could play a little bit more favorable to horses that are going to be laying closer to the pace, and she might be a little bit vulnerable. I expect her to come running, but given the dynamics of this race, I think that she might be left with a little bit too much to do at a short price here. So I'm going to fade Love Reigns in the Galway.
What about you, James?
I'll jump in with the, I took perhaps a little bit of low-hanging fruit with ATONE. It's the 7-2 morning line favorite in the Arlington Million. I'm not 100% convinced that he's going to be favored, but he will be one of the shorter priced horses. And he was in good form this winter. He ran a good race in New York, then came back and won the Pegasus World Cup Turf, a grade 1 at 1 1/8. But that race, the favorite in that race, never fired that day. He ran last, and I just thought that ATONE has not carried that form forward, running 9th and 5th in his last 2 starts at short odds. I don't think the 1.25 mile distance is a good fit either. And I agree with what Darren was saying about the pace. I think the race is going to set up for a horse from off the pace. Set Piece is one of the ones I looked at because he got no pace, I thought, in that wide stand last time. Going to get a much better setup. But for my best fade, I'm going to go with ATONE. Who do you have, Ashley?
Well, since I'm letting you all take Colonial and Saratoga so much, I'm going back to Ellis Park. And the finale on Sunday, I will be fading number 5 Interstate Daydream, a Brad Cox horse with Florent Giroux. I think will take a lot of money, but this 4-year-old filly has been inconsistent in her 4-year-old campaign. And when she wins, she tends to either set the early pace or sit back around second before making a move. I think she'll struggle to get the early lead with this field. We have a lot of early speed signed on, including number 1, Nonviolence, number 2, Coastal Charm. And Interstate Daydream hasn't run at a mile either. She's been running 1 mile and 70 yards or farther since stretching out after debuting at 6.5 furlongs in her career debut. So I'm going to fade this horse and look for another runner. I like Falconet, who came in second in the Heavenly Prize to next out graded stakes winner Frost Point, who beat Interstate Daydream in the Double Dog Dare. So I'm going to back Falconet in this spot. May not get super long odds on this horse either, but I do think all the money will come in on Interstate Daydream. So I'm going to fade this horse here. What do y'all think about that?
Like it. I like the fact that the way the pace sets up in the race, James, I think there's a ton of speed signed on here, which could make her a little bit vulnerable if she goes forward. I know she came from off the pace last time, but I think this is a race that could fall apart potentially. And I think there's a couple of prices coming from off the pace, like a horse like Soul of an Angel, who I think will be a big number. Maybe not good enough to win. Maybe she is, but one that you could build some exotics around. But I think this race has the potential to fall apart. And Interstate Daydream, I think, will be forward in there.
All right. Well, is there anything else you'll be watching for this weekend, James?
I'll mention real quick. I'm interested in Romagna Mia. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's a Team Valor filly that's shipping in for the Beverly D. I think that the morning line favorites in there, Didia, she showed up with front wraps on a second time this year. She's had front wraps. I didn't like how she finished per se and stretching out in distance last time. I thought that Fev Rover is being overvalued off of that non-threatening third, and then Diana. And Romagna Mia was a Group 2 winner in Italy last year for Team Valor. She went to France this year, and while she hasn't won from 3 starts, I mean, she ran 2 starts back against Above the Curve, who would just crush these horses. She's a Group 1 winner, just ran second in the Group 1 Nassau. And then in her last start, she ran 4th, Romagna Mia did, in a stakes race that the runner-up came right back to win the Group 1 Rothschild at Deauville. So that was another really classy, tough field. That competition is tougher than she'll be facing on Saturday. And Team Valor has shipped a horse in from overseas and won the Beverly D before. And I like Romagna Mia's chances. Darren, what do you have for what else?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. I've learned very quickly that you bet the Europeans when they come over into turf stakes in the United States, even if they look like second or third flight runners, they usually are prominent here. I have an interesting one. So this particular week, it was announced that it won't be Javier Castellano riding Mage in the Travers Stakes, but it's going to be Luis Saez. And the common thought out there was that Castellano has selected and opted to ride Arcangelo, the Belmont Stakes winner. But Ramiro Restrepo actually reached out to me and told me that that is actually not the case. The connections of Mage, Ramiro Restrepo being one of the owners of the horse, went to Javier Castellano and said, look, we're in a little bit of a tough spot here. We understand you have a very difficult decision to make, but we can't allow you to wait until the week before the race to make the decision, because the other horses are going to start to have riders commit, and we will be left without potentially the rider that we would want to have if you were to opt to Arcangelo. So we need you to make your decision now. And Javier Castellano essentially said, I can't make the decision now. I need more time. And the connections of Mage said, no disrespect, but that's just not going to work for us, because we can't leave ourselves and our horse vulnerable in that type of spot where we won't have a rider the week of the Travers. So they opted to name Luis Saez without Javier Castellano having made a decision yet, which is a rather interesting twist and turn from some of the narratives that you've seen out there. So I thought that was an interesting angle. A lot of people now are probably going to flock to Arcangelo, thinking Castellano thinks he's the better horse, but it turns out it's a little bit of some tactics being put out there by the Mage connections, trying to make sure that they had the rider that they wanted, just in case Castellano wasn't going to be available.
Well, let me just add one thing, Darren. All that might be fair and true, but to me, the fact that Castellano wasn't going with Mage right away signals to me that he doesn't necessarily think he's the better horse. And I look at this jock move, Saez going to Mage and Castellano going to Arcangelo, as a positive for Arcangelo and a negative for Mage. Castellano has won 6 Travers in the last 16 years. He's the king of the Travers. He walks out of the jockey's room with more confidence than any jockey. Only 2 of them have been favored, Bernardini and State Thirsty. He has booted home 4 horses that have paid more than $15, including massive long shots that I think he got every single ounce out of in those rides. And, to me, it's like, I can't believe, I thought it was just an open and shut case. I think if he had any doubt that Mage was going to win the Travers, he would have gone with that horse, but he has some doubt. And I think it's advantage Arcangelo because, a guy like Luis Saez, to me, like Saez, Rosario, Franco, John V, they've all won the Travers before. But, Javier Castellano is the jock I would pick for that race.
And I'll just add, it's been well documented that Arcangelo is apparently working lights out and training extremely well in preparation for the race. So I'm sure that's probably in the back of Castellano's mind as well. But looking forward to it. It's going to be a fascinating race. All 3 winners of the Triple Crown races are being pointed to it, in addition to some other great potential runners. So the Travers, it could be one for the ages, Ashley.
Well, you heard it here first. Breaking news from Darren from Ramiro Restrepo. So
not just the promo guy.
And James with a little contention.
I really thought it was going to be Mage. That move shocked me, guys. But we'll see. It's going to be like Darren said, it's going to be a fantastic race. Got Forte in there as well and others. So I hope it is a big field because I'm really excited for that race.
Real quick to wrap things up, I wanted to touch on the Saratoga Special, one of the highlights of the Saratoga meet. We have a small but competitive field of 6, and I wanted to talk about a few runners, 2 of them being the early speed horses, number 4 Hall, who's 3-1 on the morning line, a Todd Pletcher runner who won on debut in a 90K maiden special weight, has our INVADER Ortiz Jr. in the saddle. And he'll be competing for the early lead with number 6 Rhyme Schemes, who's a 4-5 morning line favorite here for Norm Cassie, who's 3-6 at Saratoga. Came off a huge win, 93 Brisnet speed figure, winning by more than 9 lengths at Ellis in a 120K maiden special weight. But I'm also intrigued by Edified in this race, another Steve Asmussen runner. I guess I'm big on Steve Asmussen this weekend. Edified won in a 120K maiden special weight at Ellis as well. Had an 80 Brisnet speed figure, a tap at Colt. He'll have Joel Rosario on the mount. And I like to look at some trends too when I'm handicapping on occasion. Steve Asmussen has won the Saratoga Special 4 times, most recently with Jackie's Warrior, who was ridden by Joel Rosario. So I'm going to go with Edified here at 7-2 on the morning line. Think he has a shot to improve in his second career start. Will be an exciting race, even though it's a small field. And I think all 3 of these runners could be even more competitive as the season progresses.
I was surprised to see Edify go off at 9-1 that first asking and run that race, but I've seen that before. Epicenter won. He was like 12-1 when he broke his maiden. So I wouldn't put too much stock in the fact he didn't get bet. I'd look more at the performance, which was a very nice win, like you highlighted.
That's all the time we have today for the jury. Again, you can head to TwinSpires.com or the TwinSpires app to check out those promos that Darren mentioned, and join us on Tuesday for the Racing Roundtable, where we're going to talk about a lot of these stakes that we just mentioned here on the jury. And again, next Thursday, we'll be back with more bets and fades for the weekend of racing next week as well. We'll see you then.